Good afternoon. Welcome to today's webinar, Plan Your Move to Hybrid and Remote Working. My name is Andrew Rigg. I'm Head of Solution Architecture here at Perfect Image, and my focus is around public cloud, specifically Microsoft Azure, AWS, and Microsoft 365. Just a bit of background so you know who's talking today. So I joined Perfect Image back in 2018 from Toshiba, Australia, where I was working within their managed services division as a solution architect. I hold several AWS and Microsoft certifications, including Azure Administrator and Architect Expert. I also hold the Azure and Microsoft 365 Security Associate certificates, and for AWS, I hold the Solution Architecture Associate and Professional certs, and I'm working towards their Security Specialist as well. So who's Perfect Image? Well, we're a managed service provider located in the northeast of the UK, and we're a cloud-first business. We're consultancy-led. We've got over 85 IT professionals, and we specialize in business intelligence and public cloud and hybrid infrastructure. So today we're going to cover the challenges that come with remote working. Overview of solutions available, productivity benefits, improved data security, also business continuity, and how these environments access. So accessing their environments, offline and offline working. We'll do a Q&A session at the end, but I'm going to stop throughout at a few stages and just to check if there's any questions come through. So you can either use the chat window or there's a questions window. And I also do have a couple of polls as well. So I'll actually start with two good polls now, just to get those ones out of the way and just to kind of see who's here and kind of help shape what I'm going to talk about as well. So I'm just going to launch the first poll. I'll give it about 30 seconds. Just wait for a few responses to come in, and then I'll close off the poll and we'll share the results. Okay, just give it a few more seconds. Okay, share results on that one there. Okay, so we've got a 50-50 split here. So half RDS, remote desktop services, and half VPN. Okay, cool. I'll do one more quickly, and then we'll move on. Again, I'll give it about another 10-15 seconds. Okay, I'll close out this one as well. And what do we got? Excellent. Everyone's here. Got a full remote working policy. Good. You're in the right session then. Okay, I'll continue on. So, for many organizations, the workplace has been undergoing, a natural evolution towards more flexible working environment. The global pandemic has massively accelerated this shift. Organizations have now acknowledged the positive impact of flexible working, and what it's had on their employees and their business. As a result, many small and medium-sized businesses are now making this, a strategic decision to embrace remote working indefinitely. There are three big trends as to kind of, that are making empowering the workforce more challenging. So this is, so having a distributed and flexible workforce. It's not new to anyone that the world's changed. All the surveys have found that working from home, will now be a permanent part of how we're going to, work going forward. Gartner ran a survey that revealed 82% of company leaders plan to allow employees to work from remotely, for some of the time. Nearly half of these said they intend to allow employees to work remotely full-time going forward. Benefits of this year, you no longer now need to recruit in your local area. Your talent pool has increased massively. As you can now employ from all over the UK. But there's also a need to improve productivity. So the cloud's accelerating Companies are unleashing more and more innovation, as they migrate to the cloud. But if you've got employees from outside your region, outside your area, then these employees really, they're full-time remote, so they need the tools and the systems in place to maintain their productivity. Kind of any stopgap solutions, that may have been implemented in the early stages of 2020, they really now need to be reviewed and replaced, something more suitable and sustainable. And then also never compromising on security and reliability. With data being more digital and more powerful, in a highly distributed workforce, the bad guys, they are getting smarter and more dedicated. A single data breach can cost millions and impact your brand for years. So security is more critical than ever. It's kind of really non-negotiable, right? So if the workforce is down, then delivering to your customers is down as well. So you need that reliability. So research shows that 85% of working adults who are currently kind of home working, want to use a hybrid approach in the future. 24% of businesses said they're intending to use an increased home working going forwards. As part of the shift, it's key for businesses to remove the reliance on staff using their own devices, and connecting or physically being in the office to access systems. This part and parcel, this is addressing the data security concerns, reviewing those legacy systems that typically will require the staff to be in the office or connected to the office network. While the move to remote work was abrupt, the return to the office, has been much more gradual. For many, a more hybrid approach, of where some employees are in the office while others work from remote will remain a commonplace. Currently, this tends to be role specific. So the remote and hybrid model promises that greater access to the talent for businesses, increased productivity for individuals, and lower costs and more flexibility, for those individuals. But it also improves the employee experiences. Many offices and businesses have already adopted this hybrid approach. Team A working on certain days, Team B working on others, and hot desking, because this has allowed them to reduce the overall office space and the cost associated with that. So up on screen are 3 common use cases, for a virtual desktop environment. So today's session will focus on the first case, the first use case, and how a virtual desktop helps to support a remote and hybrid workforce. I will touch on the other 2 points now, just because these are other reasons and the kind of use cases as to why a virtual desktop environment is useful, more so than the kind of just hybrid remote working. So if we looked at the seasonal or kind of contract workforce, providing the virtual desktop enables you to deploy desktops quickly. You can onboard and support those new workers without the need to buy and ship additional hardware. And then also when the contracts are over, it's just as easy to scale back. With the virtual workspaces, you can improve security by ensuring that the corporate IP is never at rest on the workers' local devices. Now you've also got the kind of compute intensive applications. What workers really need is to access applications, to get their jobs done. But sometimes those apps are hard to image and manage, and they also require expensive compute to run them locally. Take CAD or business intelligence, ERP systems, for example. You can pay thousands of pounds for that local hardware, those laptops, just to run these systems. Only need to repurchase them again in 3 years. You're kind of stuck in that hardware life cycle. The virtual workspaces makes it easy and cost effective to run these applications in the cloud and access them from anywhere. Like seasonal workforce, companies go through mergers and acquisitions, must quickly onboard large numbers of employees, fast, secure, and give them access to the company data. So we know your business is likely to need a remote working technologies, for a while yet. So what does a great remote working solution look like? Well, up on screen now are 4 of the cloud solutions that I'm going to cover off today. Just a quick intro into each of these before I break them down into more detail in the upcoming slides. So AWS Workspaces. It's a fully managed, persistent virtualization service that enables the users to access the data, applications, and resource, wherever they need them, whenever they need them, from any supported device. Azure Virtual Desktop, well, it's basically a cloud VDI, that delivers hosted desktops and apps with maximum flexibility. Windows 365, so this is a complete SaaS service that securely streams the Windows desktop sessions, the apps, the settings, from the Microsoft cloud to any device. Now then you can hit Microsoft 365. So this differs from the other three, right? As this is often thought about as being a kind of productivity suite, but that's Office 365, the applications. But Microsoft 365 encompasses so much more, and to confuse matters a little bit more, it's typically used with those first three options anyway. But used in its entirety, it can replace the need for any backend servers, any infrastructure, any virtual desktops. Azure AD can replace those typical Active Directory services. Endpoint Manager covers your device management, and SharePoint replaces the need for file servers. That's just a light touch. I'm going to go into these in a bit more detail now, and I'll first cover off on AWS Workspaces. So there's 4 core reasons why to choose Workspaces, to deliver the kind of secure access to your users. First and foremost is that security point. So with Workspaces, one of the critical features is that no user data is stored on the local device, which makes it less likely that your data is ever going to leak. Secondly, increased agility. So organizations need to scale up and they need to scale down, at a moment's notice. Using AWS allows you to roll out the desktops, the apps, kind of anywhere in the world within minutes. And if or when you require, then you can tear them down just as quickly. Only pay for what you use. Third is increased reliability. So running VDI on-prem is hard. AWS provides a 99.9% uptime SLA for the service. Fourth, cost optimizations. So because AWS runs at cloud scale, they can keep the infrastructure costs low, and they can pass on the savings to you, being the end customer. There's a range of kind of compute instances and bundles that kind of help find the right level of performance for users at the right price. And of course, pay as you go. The entire point of this is is to enable productive end users. With Amazon Workspaces, your end users get the experience they need, and so they can get the job done from anywhere. So just looking at the reliability side of this for Workspaces. So AWS is, its availability, as we said, is backed by the kind of SLA of 99.9%. All those billing credits, automatically get applied. The infrastructure is built around regions and availability zones. So availability zones can be thought of as a separate data center within that region. Virtual desktops, that can be deployed in kind of a warm standby mode, in additional regions to meet disaster recovery objectives, so for key users and critical business apps. And cross-region redirection, it is a feature that enables like the users to be redirected in a disaster recovery region if the primary region is down, and that's without the users needing to see a disruption. And if we flip over to the kind of optimized cost sides of things, so AWS provides tools and policies that help provide the control for the cost of these services. The two that I'm going to call out are the Amazon Cost Optimizer for Workspaces. So this analyzes all of the instances that are in use, and it automatically converts the workspace to the most cost-effective pay-as-you-go option. So whether it's hourly or monthly, and that depends upon the user's individual usage. So it's something that we don't have to manage in the background or even think about. Then you hit auto stop. So this stops the workspace environment due to the specified timeout on basically how long the users have been idle for. So this again reduces the cost of that environment. If not using it, again, don't pay for it. So if we move on to Azure Virtual Desktop. So first up, this isn't a new solution. So Azure Virtual Desktop, or AVD for short, is just a new name for Windows Virtual Desktop, WVD. The solution's matured massively over the last 24 months from when it went generally available just before the pandemic hit. Now, no one knew at the time what was just around the corner. And it would cause so many organizations to essentially leave the office or work from home. The role that this service would play in enabling staff to continue the functions has nothing had changed. It added so much demand across the globe in the Microsoft infrastructure that Microsoft had to limit the workloads that they could host for a short amount of time, but they also pulled back on Microsoft 365 functionality just to provide additional capacity for Azure. So what is that? What is Azure Virtual Desktop? Think of your traditional RDS environment, but with Azure Virtual Desktop, you can now have groups of users sharing those session hosts, but now they have the true Windows 10 multi-session experience. But you're not limited to just Windows 10 and the multi-session experience. You can have dedicated hosts for specific users or tasks. So if you've got a specific requirement where a GPU optimized machine is needed for a number of CAD users, these users can be assigned to a different pool of servers, and they can access both pools if needed. When using the multi-session experience, you can maximize the cost savings by having these servers automatically start as the users increase and shut down out of business hours. So so you just leave maybe a single host available for users who do need it 24/7. So Azure Virtual Desktop customers, they do benefit from all the kind of Azure security services as you build out your deployment. But there's kind of three specific advantages that belong to just this kind of service alone. Now that is, the attack surface is reduced. And now this is because there's a reverse connection technology in place. So this means that there's no inbound ports need to be open to get to the service. So no VMs need to be exposed. There's also fewer places, so especially it's fewer places for bad actors to attack. Now the ability to define role-based access means that administration tasks can be broken out as well. So this also protects kind of the most sensitive users and groups for those workloads. And then finally, the user sessions are isolated. So that's even within the multi-session environment. So now for something new. So that's Windows 365. So this was about, I think it was last month, the start of last month, Microsoft released their latest offering, so Windows 365. But it's actually built on Azure Virtual Desktop. But now the management is now reduced. So there's different ways of managing these two environments. So just as Microsoft brought Office to the cloud, with Office 365 about 10 years ago, they're now bringing Windows to the cloud with Windows 365. So it kind of sees an evolution and kind of, from being device-based OS to being a kind of personal computing platform, flexible for the users and for the business. It also kind of creates a new hybrid personal computer category. Now they're calling it Cloud PC. So this uses both the kind of power of the cloud and the capabilities of the device itself to provide that full personalized Windows experience. The new Windows 365 experience kind of comes as organizations trying to grapple with identifying what are the best ways to facilitate this hybrid working model. It's just another item for the mix. So it's got the same kind of user experience and benefits as Azure Virtual Desktop, but the management of the backend infrastructure, all its services are all delivered by Microsoft. So this means that the management and the deployment of the Windows PC, along with the applications, are all under control or ours as a managed service provider by using Microsoft Endpoint Manager. So the Windows 365 experience, so it's versatile, it's familiar, it gives the productivity by delivering the users their personalized content, the settings that they're setting for their applications. It's simple to deploy and manage from a single console. It's secure by design, again, by leaving no data on the user's physical device. And it is available on any device, and it's optimized for the best experience on a Windows, on a Windows PC. It's at a predictable price. It's a per monthly price. But then lastly, it's also scalable. So as the workforce changes, again, you can scale up and down. Now, Microsoft 365 as a remote working solution, I hear you say. Well, yes, but if you look at it as a total package, not as just the productivity side, kind of using the Office applications. When using the full Microsoft 365 package, as a remote working solution, this is where you should be looking at, what are the requirements for your kind of current server infrastructure, whether that be cloud-based or in your office. Typical server requirements tend to be around user authentication, file access, and device management, by group policy. But now these three items alone start to fall down in that kind of remote and hybrid working environment without the use of VPNs. Now, to use a VPN, you're talking about more expense, more management, just to give users access to these services. Now, when you're using the likes of Azure AD, SharePoint, Endpoint Manager, they're all cloud-native services. These can replace the need for Active Directory, file servers, and typically you already kind of have the capacity for these services within your 365 licenses. So you're probably already paying for them and either not utilizing them or not utilizing them fully. So the next couple of slides, I'll be talking about all these services, not just the Office apps. So again, I'll be talking about the Microsoft 365 suite, not the Office 365 suite. Now, all the features and everything I'm going to talk about here, they kind of come with your Microsoft Business Premium plan and the Microsoft Enterprise plans, like F3, E3, E5, not the basic kind of a standard and personal plans. Just quickly, Business Premium's got a max allocation of 300 users per tenancy, whereas Microsoft E3 is unlimited. Business Premium's relatively new. It's been around for kind of 18-24 months as a license, and it was brought in specifically to bridge the gaps between the business standard and the enterprise plans. Now, as I said, I'm not going to talk about the Office suite, the applications as part of remote working. So these are typically used, the Office apps, as part of the virtual desktop environment regardless, unless you're using the likes of G Suite with Workspaces. So I'm going to focus kind of around Intune, now called Endpoint Manager, information protection, and Azure AD P1, SharePoint Teams, so the services. Now, when you're usually looking at using 365, it doesn't have to be a standalone solution either. So often a business will have users who are 365 native and a selection of users who still need a virtual desktop, mainly due to the fact that they've got legacy applications that need to run within server infrastructure. But when paired with virtual desktops, users have the same experience regardless of that location, on their device or on their cloud PC. So how can Microsoft 365 help protect the users and your data and the devices? So first, you've got Azure AD Premium. So this gets you access to conditional access. It's where you can create policies that that link the user's identity, the location, device health, before allowing access to the data or the service. It also provides the ability for users to securely reset their own passwords, maybe by MFA, could be a phone call, or even custom security questions, and you can group them together as well if needed. So second, you can manage the apps, the data, the documents, on the devices. So and the devices, that are accessing the company data. So this is regardless of the device type, the device OS. So whether it's iOS, Mac, Android, or Windows. So using Endpoint Manager helps to manage these devices and access to that data. Third, information protection. So you gain more control over the company data and the documents. So it helps protect from data leaks, and it prevents that sensitive information like NI numbers, credit card information, or even custom fields that you define from being shared outside the business. Control and access to the documents even after the documents have left your business can still be controlled, can still be revoked. But then we can also look at Microsoft Defender. So this is it provides protection from sophisticated cyber threats, whether they're hidden in email attachments, in links. It kind of uses the cutting edge defense, and helps protect against phishing and spoofing attacks. Helps protect against ransomware and other malware attacks. It all leverages the kind of £1 billion plus that Microsoft puts into security each year. So Microsoft 365, it is the solution that brings in the kind of best in class, with the productivity of Office 365 and the advanced security with the kind of Microsoft 365 features. Now, when this is all configured, the business has the benefit of knowing that the data is safe and only trusted devices have access. So just going to pause for a moment. I'm just going to quickly check if there's any more questions, and I'll probably do one more poll on here as well. Okay, just the one question before I go into the poll. So what license do I need for information protection? So it does come bundled in with Microsoft Business Premium and with the Microsoft Enterprise plans, but you also can add it in as a separate license. So if you do have Business Standard, you can have it as an add-on, or if you've got an E1, a smaller E1 plan, you can have it as an add-on. But typically it's more cost effective to get it kind of added in with a bundle. So I'm going to quickly do another poll while I'm here. Okay, so it should be up on screen now. I'll give it 20 seconds. Just give it another 10 seconds. Okay, I'll close that one out. And we've got an even split. Half you know where your sensitive data is and half you don't. That's not surprising. Cool, I'll close that one there. Okay, and I'll move on. So now I couldn't talk about Microsoft 365 without quickly mentioning Teams Telephony, or you may know it as Microsoft Voice. Think of this as a bolt-on solution to Microsoft Teams. So it brings together kind of calling, chat messages from all in one application. So it's one phone number across your computer, your mobile phone, or even your desk phone. It gets you all the kind of standard features like, consultative transfer, music on hold, voicemail, call queues, IVRs, and more of a regular telephony system. So you can also, you've got two ways of kind of paying for the minutes as well, if you will. So you've got the Microsoft Core plans, or you can kind of use what they deem as direct routing. So this is where you use Teams as your front end, but you use your existing telephony provider or a supported telephony provider as your calling plan and all as the actual functionality you require. I'm not going to go into that one any further, but I just couldn't mention it because just the amount of times that we kind of are asked around the likes of, we need to, we've got users at home, we want to limit them using their mobile phones, how can we give them a phone number? This is one of the simplest and kind of quickest add-ins to achieve that. So the question of which cloud provider or service provider, it isn't a simple answer. There's a lot of considerations that need to be made, and they will vary upon your business. I'll talk through a few scenarios now and kind of reasons and points that can kind of start to sway choices. Now, price. So it's normally high up on everyone's list, and this is for taking in consideration existing workloads, existing licenses, whether that be volume, software assurance, enterprise agreements. If you've already started a migration to cloud, but maybe you haven't fully considered what other options there are, or whether you may be using your current cloud provider because that's what was known. When you kind of look at location, so if your cloud strategy is to move your business workloads, so all your server infrastructure, to a specific cloud provider, then this will generally start to push you towards a particular provider. But it still does leave room for discussions because it should be more than just hosting services, right? So servers. There are business requirements. All the departments have their own requirements, and they all need to be considered. It should no longer be IT's place to make that decision alone. Numbers of users as well. So for argument's sake, we're going to call it 20 users. And all three up on the screen would be an option. But once we kind of consider the hours required, so if a business, if it was business hours or if it's 24/7 access, then we'll need to take that into account, whether these services are billed on an hourly rate or whether it's for the likes of Windows 365, where it's a subscription based, whether you use it for an hour or 730 hours. So let's say it was 20 users, they each need it for about just a few hours per day. From that cost perspective alone, then kind of you'd lean towards AWS Workspaces. It'd be more suited for that cost of that kind of type of environment. On the flip side, if you've got thousands of hundreds or thousands of users who require 24/7 access, but not all at the same time, this would sway you towards Azure Virtual Desktop. Using that multi-session experience to provide the most cost-effective option. Other considerations, the type of users, again, do they have GPU requirements like CAD users? Like I said, it isn't a simple answer, but that's where we're here to help kind of make your choice. So up on screen, they were the three kind of virtual desktops. Didn't go into the office side again. So just like all the panic buying at the supermarkets, there was a rush to purchase laptops. Now, global availability was already reduced due to with the Windows 7 end of life. There was an Intel chip issue. And on top of this, we've now got a global chip shortage, which I'm sure you've all heard about, due to the shutdowns and kind of general productivity restrictions that COVID kind of has had on those manufacturers. Again, this is another problem we kind of see with users kind of using workarounds, kind of hacks as a solution, is allowing staff to use their own devices, due to those shortages, or simply if it was just a cost-saving measure. But if it's used without the likes of an MDM and a MAM solution in place, it creates a number of problems, including data residing on those personal devices with no control by the organization. So using your personal device, shouldn't be seen as a cost-saving exercise without having a proper kind of BYOD policy and those controls put in place to ensure the data on the device can be managed. Personal devices, so they've been used in many situations as that kind of stopgap, because it's thought to be kind of for that short time experience, relatively short time. All devices, regardless of whether it's personal or corporate, they should be managed and secured. You need to be able to wipe the business data from these devices if they're lost, stolen, or simply if an employee leaves the business. Now, for those allowing employees to take their PCs home and their monitors home and that kind of environment, that 100% limits their ability to have that kind of hybrid kind of work from home office days. So what does the future of remote and hybrid working look like, and kind of how can we prepare? So even once we're back in the office, what about the kind of customer or partner facing appointments and meetings, those conferences and events? Customer interactions, they are going to change. You no longer need to travel for hours just for kind of, for an hour meeting. Now that Teams and Zooms have been widely adopted, this will reduce those types of meetings. Of course, some things do just work better face-to-face. I would love to be doing this face-to-face, for example. But not every meeting needs to be, right? So The emphasis on secure online meeting rooms with quality audio and video conferencing capabilities, that will only increase. This means that you need to have an efficient, easy to communicate solution that enables external users to get involved within these meetings as well. So there'll always be the need for the end users to have these devices, to connect. Now, if you're kind of going down the road more of a kind of 365 native solution, so all in using all those services, the devices themselves, they need to be able to stand up to multitasking. They've got to be a higher end device. But unlike if you're using Windows Virtual Desktop, this often means that device can be a much cheaper, lower spec device, and because most of those workloads are pushed off to those cloud services. So when we look at business continuity, now I'm not just talking about the kind of standard conversations, backup, restore points, how much data can you lose, and kind of what are the time frames until you need to be up and running. Yes, that's absolutely important too. But if we do look at the wider picture, so how the pandemic forced almost every business to implement a business continuity solution. We were all sent home, from our normal workplace. We all had to carry on as in effectively the business burnt to the ground, or the building burnt to the ground, should I say. Now, some were naturally more prepared than others. A lot put those kind of workaround solutions in place. It's these workaround solutions that can't continue, as they do affect productivity and security in that hybrid kind of remote model. Those who embrace the cloud services, and have that robust cloud strategy, they were able to rapidly expand their environments, to create entire remote working solutions by utilizing either AWS Workspaces or Azure Virtual Desktops to provide their users with that desktop to carry on as if nothing had changed, with the exception of they may have been working from the kitchen, the bedroom, or their sofa. Now, most businesses have some type of footprint within Microsoft 365. Typically, it starts with email. If we do spin this slightly and look at what your requirements are or what's expected from you from the cloud provider, so for Microsoft, for example, right? So this is the section with the Microsoft Service Agreements that recommends backup. Section B, that kind of last sentence there, we recommend that you regularly back up your content and data and store on services, or store using a third-party apps and services. Just because you're using a cloud service provider doesn't mean that the provider has all the responsibilities, especially when it comes to business continuity. We need to consider the what, the what if. Now, the good news is, for this mark on screen, at least, there's plenty of solutions available to help protect your 365 data. Now, if you're using a virtual desktop, what happens if you've got no internet connectivity? Well, so Azure Virtual Desktop, Windows 365, AWS Workspaces, you need to be connected to the internet at all times, and it must be a good connection. If you experience dropouts or issues with latency, you travel frequently, or simply have a terrible home network, with poor internet connectivity, you will have a bad experience. Now, Microsoft 365 as a solution here, it's got the edge on this, right? Because you can synchronize content from OneDrive, from SharePoint to your local device. You can continue to work, and when you've got connectivity again, it will sync back to these services. Now, it will depend upon your solution and what you need access to. If you're using a virtual desktop because you need access to those applications, you can't do anything about this, right? Regardless of where it's hosted, even if it was back in your office, if you got rubbish internet, you can have a rubbish experience. But if you're using that kind of hybrid 365 and virtual desktop, and you didn't need access to those hosted applications all the times, then this will allow the users to continue to work, and choose the situation that works the best on their local device using 365, or if they're connected to the desktop using their other apps, 365 there, it's going to be the same across both those environments. So innovation is important, don't get left behind. So you're probably sick to death right now about hearing about COVID and how it's being used as the reasons for everything, why something's had to change, but the reality is it has impacted every single UK business. it has shown us the importance of remote and kind of hybrid working, and the devastating consequences if the business can't adapt. The tech is integral to business survival, the growth, and the success. It is the differentiator between companies that do okay and companies that do take over the world. Some companies found the transition to work from home difficult. These were the ones that were more traditional, paper-based, on-prem workplace. That older legacy systems where you had to be inside the four walls for the employees to do their job. Now, just kind of starting the wrap up here now. So, kind of got three key takeaways here. So, the future of work is changing. The new working methodology is to work any place, anytime, with anyone. There are no longer boundaries on how people work and collaborate. So the digital workplace is the new norm. So today we discussed four options, that would or could be considered, but it doesn't need to be one or the other. It is often a mixture of these. They all offer the ability to work from anywhere, from any device. Out the possible. So AWS and Microsoft, that offers a wide range of capabilities to help simplify remote working while providing that additional security benefits to your business. Now, remote working, it is here to stay. So we need to avoid kind of the data security sides of those kind of workarounds and any shadow IT that may have been put in place. Those remote meetings, conferences and events, those appointments, they are all going to continue going forward. So I hope today's webinar has given some insights into the options available and the flexibility and kind of security require. So as part of, I think, signing up today, you will be sent a link following this event. And there is a section within that kind of handouts there for a copy of the presentation for the kind of free kind of cloud readiness assessment. Now, I will check for questions again, and I do have one last poll as well. So let me first of all check for any questions. There's two spots I'd like to hide them in here. Okay, so one here. So I'm a heavy Microsoft user, and most of my services are Windows based. Does this mean that Microsoft should be my option? The answer here is no. So that reason alone, just because you're using Microsoft workloads, doesn't force you to use the likes of Azure and Microsoft. In fact, AWS definitely has more workloads running in AWS than Microsoft does in Azure. There's hefty incentives to move your Windows workloads, from AWS. We work with AWS and our customers to maximize the funding that is available. Got another one here as well. We're using cloud services, but I don't know why we've chosen the current provider or if it's really the best option. How easy is it to change? So for this, I would need a bit more information, but what we'll do is we'll contact you after the session and set up a meeting to understand your kind of current workloads, their requirements, and what your objectives need to be. It isn't too late to build a cloud strategy if you don't have one. Every cloud strategy should be constantly updated. They should be reviewed and there should be challenges. The public cloud offering is changing at a rapid rate. What you implement now may be different, in the next 24 to 48 months. So I'm just going to run my last final poll while I check for any more questions as well. Again, I'll give it kind of 30 seconds. Just give it another 10 seconds. Okay, closing out this one. All right, we've got another 50-50. So do you allow staff to use your personal devices? No, so it's enforced by technology and policies. Brilliant. And then yes, and but we have no visibility of what data is stored locally. So we've got the good and the bad there. Okay, I'll hide that one. Okay, I don't think there's any more questions. So thank you for your time today. I think we've wrapped up just bang on time as well for once. I'll hang around just for another minute or so, just in case anything does pop in, but otherwise, thanks for your time.